Hello.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm good.
Welcome. Have you ever attended a CHI before?
No, I haven't. This is my first time.
Awesome. Well, welcome. We are really excited to have you here today. You know, what we as a community really love is bringing computing, bringing technology to people who, well, to everyone, and everyone includes people who don't normally have access to it, or at least, you know, the technology isn't designed for them in mind. And I think when we talk about diversity, we oftentimes think about that. You know, technology, education in technology and computer science doesn't necessarily have everyone in mind.
Right.
So with that being said, could you tell us a little bit about why you founded Black Girls Code and a little bit about what it does?
So I founded Black Girls Code back in 2011. That was when we did our first pilot program, which was a really tiny program that was run across 6 Saturdays. It had only about 6 girls, and you know, sometimes we had as many as 10. But it was really driven from this desire that I had as a mother to get my daughter more, I think I would say, creative with her use of technology. Yeah. She is a heavy user of technology from the gaming standpoint, and that's kind of like her passion and what she loves. And back in 2010, 2011, as she was about to go into middle school, you know, I was really looking for a program that could kind of nurture this raw talent that I saw in her and this really raw interest in game design and game development. And when I looked around at the landscape back at that time, there were a few programs that were targeted to kids, although there was a huge focus on adults getting involved in coding and learning to code. The focus really hadn't shifted to kids yet. And the programs that I did find for her were relatively expensive, and what I found in those programs is that they did not have many girls. So it's like looking at it from a gender lens, the class was really not balanced. Very few girls were there, and also very few students of color. And so my fear at that time, and it really was a fear, was that as a middle school girl who's already going through all kinds of things, chemically and physiology, everything is like going crazy at that time. I was like, oh no, she's definitely not going to stick with this. If she's, you know, tossed into this classroom with nothing but boys and they're fighting for attention, she may drop out. And so really wanted to create a program that would kind of like become a nurturing bubble for girls like her, and where she could connect with others. Like in her friend group that she had originally, no one really was into games but her. So she didn't really see herself reflected even on a peer level. Yeah. But I knew that that wasn't necessarily the reality. So I wanted to create, you know, this sort of nurturing environment so these girls could come together in a safe space. They could learn about coding, they could be creative, and they could really see this interest, a seed of an interest that they have, become something even possibly bigger in the future.
Yeah, that's really exciting. I also taught a lot of courses down in San Diego, and an anecdote that I have is I was going up the elevator to go teach a course, and a mom and her son and her daughter were in the elevator, and I looked at the kids and I said, oh, are you coming to the class? And they said, yeah. My brother is, and the boy said, yeah, I'm super, super excited. And I kind of like looked to the girl and I was like, well, what are you gonna do today? And she was like, oh, I don't know, just wait for my brother. And I was like, you know, you can come too, you know, and the mom was like, oh yeah, you can come too, and kind of seemed like she didn't even think to ask her daughter. Right. And then the daughter ended up sitting in on that one day and then stayed for the entire week, which was really great. So what do you think? I agree. I think that we need more programs, technologies, courses that have a specific group in mind that isn't necessarily the traditional group. However, what do you think about kind of the parents' role and what parents need to understand so that they can encourage their children despite not having those things?
Yeah, I think for me, you know, it's a sort of interesting experience in that my background is as an electrical engineer with a minor in computer science. So my daughter grew up with having a role model, so to speak, in her house, even though, you know, as kids do, she does consider me a role model. Maybe now that she's in high school, I may get a few bit of credits here and there, but she never really looked at me in that way.
Right.
And also think that that though made a difference in our household. So for me, I always tell people that growing up, you know, I don't know, it's a miracle that I became an engineer because I was not directed towards that pathway until I got to high school, and my guidance counselors were like, well, why don't you go to engineering? I was like, that sounds interesting. Maybe I will do that. But I really had this very gender-driven like childhood where, you know, what I was, you know, encouraged to play with, the things that I was purchased was, you know, very like Barbie focused. Not that there's anything wrong with Barbie, but that's what it was. So when I had my daughter, I was really, I don't even know if I thought about it, but I just left it open to her interpretation of what she wanted to do, what she wanted to play with. And she kind of naturally navigated to things that were more creative and building and drawing. And I did not discourage that.
Yeah.
And so I think one of the things that we often find with parents is that, especially if they've had a similar like gender really focused upbringing, they tend to steer their girls away from things that they think maybe not for girls. And so we really try to demystify what we're doing with the parents so they understand that it's not a girl thing, it's not a boy thing, it's just coding. It's just, you know, bits and ones, and that's it. It's there's no gender to it. And so I think one of the things that we find is that it's not necessarily an issue that the girls are not interested in this, but the messages that they get from parents and teachers and society overall is that this is not something that girls do. So everything that we're doing in our workshops and our classes and what we say is trying to kind of like break through that bias and then break through that stereotype so they see that there are no boundaries.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you mentioned that at the very beginning, you know, you had Saturday classes with 6 to 10 girls. Can you tell us a little bit about what Black Girls Code looks like today?
So today we have over 10 chapters in the U.S. and we have a chapter in Johannesburg, South Africa. It's interesting that when we started, we really did think we would be this hyper-local organization. And we would just be in Bayview Hunters Point in San Francisco. We would just have a few girls coming in every weekend. We had no idea that it would grow to almost 10,000 girls in just 5 years. It's our 5th year. So we didn't think that there was even this much demand. So it's almost like a fluke. Was in the middle of 2012, we were like, oh, we're doing great. We're up to like 20 girls in a classroom. Why don't we take this on the road and take it to Atlanta and see if we could get girls to come to the class. And I remember that particular class vividly because like an idiot, and any new startup person and you're starting something, you have no clue what you're doing. And so I was like, I'm just going to go here and I'm going to do this little workshop and I can run it myself. And I get to the workshop and there's like a wraparound line to get in. And I was like, I don't think I thought this through very well. And I still to this day, I have no clue. I know there was like over 100 girls in the classroom, but you know, there were just so many, I could not even count them. So it was just overwhelming. And I think that was the moment that we knew we were on to something, possibly, that this was something that not only, you know, this small group of girls in the Bay Area needed, but this was something that people needed in Atlanta. And so we went from Atlanta to Chicago to Detroit, all in this course of the summer, which our goal was to reach like 200 girls. And at the end of the summer, when we were tallying up the numbers, we had reached over 1,000. And then the organization has just continued to grow at that level ever since. So we haven't ever slowed down since we started. So it's really been amazing, I think, to see how much girls are really clamoring to learn these tools and to learn about robotics. When we started doing robotics a year ago, we hadn't been doing any robotics, although I knew that, you know, there's FIRST Robotics and things like that from my daughter was involved in that, but we hadn't really started to teach robotics. And I was like, I'm not sure if they're gonna like robotics, but you know, we can try it. And that's become like the biggest class we do every year. Like we had it first year for us in the Bay Area at UC Berkeley. And we had a few rooms, they'd given us a few rooms. before we even marketed it, we were like at 50. So we went back to UC Berkeley. We were like, okay, we think we're going to need a few more rooms. And so by the end of that particular workshop, we had over 100 girls signed up. So this year we're like, okay, we're going to be prepared in 2015, and we need twice as many rooms, and we're signing up all these girls. We'll definitely have 100. Well, we did that, but we ran out of rooms again, and we had about 200. So it's like they keep coming. So it's like if you build it, they will come, and they will come, and they will come and come. So it's really been, I think, a definite sea of change I've seen in the last 5 years in terms of people really understanding that girls have an aptitude for computer science as well as an interest in it. And we're even seeing that in the numbers as the organization continues to grow.
Yeah, that's exciting. Down in San Diego, we have a few small programs that are run by the universities down there. And one thing that they've found to be successful when they're going into lower income areas is to have the computer science courses be related to projects that they can build for their community or for their family, which I found was really, really interesting. You know, they build a community garden with sensors that measure the water temperature and things like that. And I think you mentioned just now, you know, talking about bringing in robotics and things like that, and I know you have an interest in bioinformatics and you have your degree in electrical engineering, so how do you and Black Girls Code manage all of the interests and all the possibilities that computer science can bring to these young women, and, you know, how do you decide which ones to pursue next?
Well, one of the things that we really focus on, and that's key to our philosophy, is that technology is a tool. So it's not the end goal, but it's a goal, it's a tool to reach a particular goal. So we have a really strong focus of creating a culturally sensitive program as well. So that means many of our workshops are really focused on project-based learning where they're creating a mobile app that solves an issue in their community, or we're doing a hackathon and the topic is teen domestic violence, or it might be the topic environmentalism when it was Project Humanity last year. But really using the technology as the tool and then culture as the lever. And that, I think, really allows us to have students that are coming into the program really engaged. Because one of the barriers for girls is that girls tend, and I hate to say that this is all girls still, because I don't want to, I want to make it so, like, so tied into gender, but girls really are interested in doing work that's impactful. So the way we're able to really get girls in our program involved is because we show them is that this is not going to be an isolating career that they're going into. This is something that they could use if they're going into the field of medicine. This is something that they may use if they're going into informatics. This is something they may use if they want to go into the music field or fashion field. It's just a tool that will elevate their work to the next level. So we try to introduce as many different forms of technology as we possibly can with that in mind. So now we're going this year into doing a lot of things with Internet of Things. This is our next workshop in a couple of weeks. I'm really adamant that we do something with VR and AR, and I don't know what we're going to do with it, but I like it. And I think the girls will like it too. So we're really all about showing them all the possibilities and then using this as just to plant a seed that they can take and go deeper and take it further than we even could.
I love that. I actually wrote a paper called Computing is the Fourth R, because I completely agree. I think it's really just about having a basic literacy so that you can apply it anywhere. And I remember I was teaching these foster youth at one point, and this one girl said, well, I just want to be a preschool teacher. I don't need to learn this. And I said, oh, well, what if you made an app that had, you know, tactile, you know, well, it wouldn't necessarily be tactile, but like maybe colors and shapes for your young preschoolers to play with. And she was like, oh, I didn't think that I could actually build something for my students. And, you know, it doesn't have to just be you're a coder, you're a programmer, right?
And if that is what they want to do, that's perfectly fine as well. But I think for us, the goal is to make sure that as we see this generation becoming more and more computer literate, how do we make sure that it goes beyond that?
Yeah.
So beyond just a basic usage of these tools, and to know a little bit about what's behind the cover, so they can create.
Exactly.
So it's sort of like, I love this quote by Douglas Rushkoff, which is code or be coded. And so I think being able to look at coding, he wrote a whole book about it. I like it. But it's about, making sure that we teach computer science, as a language and a basic skill set that every young person needs to know at least a little bit of basic understanding about.
Definitely, definitely. I just had a question and then I just lost it. What was it? Well, anyways, we can move on to another one.
Okay.
As a woman who, when you got your degree in electrical engineering, and like you said, you weren't even necessarily primed for that, and you're a woman of color, and then you went and started a company, what kind of challenges have you faced doing all those things, and how do you bring that to your organization?
Well, I think for me, many things that I faced is, this consistent bias about my abilities as a woman, or even a woman of color, or, the legitimacy of my place in space and time and wherever that was. So that could be from going into my very first engineering class as a freshman in college, and being one of just a few women in those classes. In electrical engineering, I always tell people, I was like, you think computer science is bad? Think about if you went into electrical engineering. I mean, I saw no women. I didn't even have women professors for like my whole 4 years of college. And maybe one or two upperclassmen that were in the EE major. So it was very isolating from that standpoint, and I think a lot of my time has been about breaking that bias in terms of making sure that my place at the table was secure and people respected that. So one of the things that I definitely try to impart in our program with our girls is creating this sense of self-confidence, because I understand the fact that we're doing our part to change the narrative and move the needle, but that needle is not going to move in 5 years. It's probably not going to move in 10. Hopefully by 20 years we will have made some progress. That's my goal, and hopefully BGC has a part in that. But in the interim, how are they able to represent that they have skills when they walk into a room? How are they able to, I would say, overcome the biases and the stereotypes that they're inevitably going to encounter? And that is a part of everything that we're doing in the program. So for example, as I've mentioned a lot, and I use my daughter as my example many, many times, but when she started coding, as I mentioned, she was in these very male-dominated environments. And she went to all-girls middle school. She was on a robotics team, and that's where she really gained this love of robotics. But when she went to high school, it's a co-ed high school. She's still on the robotics team. And I remember an incident like a year or two ago. I was taking to her weekend practice for the robotics team, and it's an early Saturday morning, so I'm like halfway asleep, and I'm just driving into Oakland Hills to drop her off. And I get there to drop her off at the house where the team is meeting, and I just glance over casually at the garage, and there's this just boys, and they're tinkering around something that I can't see what it is. And she gets out to go in. I was like, wait, don't go. Are you okay? Because immediately I'm thinking, oh, this is not a good scene. These is like teenage boys in this garage and my daughter, and I don't know what they're doing. And she was like, yeah, I'm fine. And I was like, are you really sure? I mean, do they treat you nice? And she was like, of course they do. And I'm still a little skeptical as I drive off slowly, and I stop around the corner and I look back just to be sure. But she's perfectly fine, and they're working together, and they're working on their project. But it showed me in that moment that I still had, these internal perceptions about things that I had encountered in my life. And we have actually been doing something right in the program that my daughter has a sense of confidence that she can work in this environment now and not feel lesser than.
Yeah.
And I think it also says something right about the boys and their parents and this next generation, and that they're able to see past these facades of differences that we have. So that's why I remain like very, very bullish on this next generation, because I think we can get it right with this generation if we really open up opportunities for all of our kids and give our girls that added sense of self-confidence that they need to be able to, really be a part, a leadership role in the team.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I remember my question from earlier, and I think it applies perfectly after you just spoke about that. I think what our community really loves is kind of finding that fine line between computers and humans, and when is it appropriate to bring in a human, when is it appropriate to kind of build the technology that might be able to either simulate or enable an interaction between actual humans, or just kind of all of that space. And I know from my experience, it's difficult. We started my company when we did Sunday workshops, and, we started with 30 kids, and now we're in, I think it's something like 35 schools all around San Diego, and, but then we also decided to build a technology. And we have over 30,000 users using that technology. And one thing that's really important to me, especially moving forward, building this Kid Hub thing, is bringing in those personal interactions, the community, the shoulders to lean on, just kind of all of that you get in those in-person things through a technology. And I know it's not going to be perfect. I know it's not going to be as good as if we had these types of programs everywhere. But in your experience, do you have any kind of tidbits of things that we as a community might be able to include in the technologies that we're building that might be able to be more inclusive of Black girls coding, or other, minorities, or anybody from any kind of disabilities or things like that? Just any tidbits.
Well, I think for me, what I found, and as we've been building out Black Girls Code, is that we always consider ourselves a grassroots organization and really a community of people as more than anything. So we talk about Black Girls Code being a movement, and it's a movement of people. But I think the only way that you will be able to build for a community is that those voices have to have input into what you are building. So I would say in terms of looking at ways to actually work with communities. And I love programs, like there's some programs in Atlanta that is building a maker lab like right in the community on like Spelman's campus, and ways that you can get the community in to see like what you're actually building, and to tell you what are the needs that they have and things you should be building too. So I don't think you can build really the community-centered technology without having the community involved in building technology. That's sort of like not answering the question, but like you have
it's
to
hard.
you have to give the community a piece of what you're building, and to be able to create along with you as equal partners. And I think that's when we look at efficacy of what we're doing with technology or science or anything, being able to make the community equal partners in the creation is key to making sure that it meets a broader need for more people.
Definitely. Yeah, I think I feel the same way. I always try to make sure that what I build is more of a platform, and we allow either teachers or parents to customize the experience for the students, and oftentimes the students can customize it for themselves as well, but not coming in with kind of this box and saying, here, open it and do it, but more, here are the tools, here are the pieces, go ahead and put it together how you see.
I think one of the things that we often say a lot is that there's no lack of talent in the community. There's just a lack of opportunity. So finding ways to, open up those opportunities for the community to come in and learn these tangible skills, I think that's the key to like whatever the new technologies will be in the future, because we don't know. So I think one of the things even on the education system in general is that we don't listen to kids. We're building all these supposed educational advances and innovations, but there are people that are my age and older that are doing that. And what do we know? Well, we don't know. Like, so, you know, it's hard to say that when we think we have the answers, but I think the answers really lie outside of ourselves.
Yeah, I think that's interesting because I've noticed the same. We don't even know what the teachers want.
Right.
So oftentimes the teachers are given these boxes and said, here's the book, here's the answers, go and teach it. And that's not what they want. They want to have, you know, the support for something new, but they want to be able to have the creativity to build for their class that year,
Right.
which is very different from the year before or the next year after.
Absolutely.
Yeah, no, I completely agree.
Yeah.
Where do you hope to see, you know, the students that are going through your program in the next 5 years?
Well, I definitely, you know, I say that, you know, we want to use technology to be just a tool. That is true, and that's honest. But I absolutely would like to see one of our girls becoming the next Mark Zuckerberg, or see, I'm not ashamed to say it. You know, I want to see, you know, students that are coming through our program really creating the next great technology company or innovation, or even using it to do something, you know, transformational for society. So it's been, you know, a real pleasure for me to see the students that are coming from our programs going into other programs, or going now into college and majoring in computer science, because I really think that these girls are going to be more than just computer technologists. I think they're going to be leaders in the industry in the future. So I'm really looking forward to seeing students that we've touched in even a little way becoming the voice and taking my place. I always tell my daughter, I was like, you should take over my company, you know, get older. And she's like, I don't want your company, I want to do my own. And I was like, well, that's fine too, but you know, maybe you'll change your mind. So I think in terms of just being able to pass the mantle to this next generation of girls and see this shift in the industry is going to be something that I'm looking forward to seeing.
Definitely. Yeah. Definitely. That's exciting. Yeah. I think they're coming up with some audience questions.
Okay.
We're going to come up.
We have a few questions to ask
All
from the
right.
audience.
Exciting.
All right.
So this is fascinating stuff, and it's really super to hear it. You are going to love how many questions there are.
Okay.
Because I'm like, there's this whole list. The question that the most people in the audience, 26 people want to know this, which I sort of love being able to have those sort of metrics. 27. Have you ever experimented with having mixed workshops to give the girls experience with interaction with boys in that environment and to educate boys about equal abilities?
Yes. So we actually, we had a workshop last weekend, and it was co-ed. And so we don't do all of our workshops like this, but we do them occasionally. We also occasionally take our girls to other events where it's a co-ed environment. But what we found is that the girls that in our program are, as I mentioned before, they become very self-confident, which is fantastic. One example is that before we started doing our own hackathons, we took our girls to another youth hackathon, and we selected our strongest, you know, coders, you know, our girls are our top students, and then they mixed them up. And they had boys on their team that they didn't know. And we were all like, oh my God, they mixed up our teams, how's this gonna work? And the girls, in those environments, the reason we do single sex is that we really want the girls to be able to lead and feel confident in that. And so I was really worried. And the parents that were chaperoning for this event was like, you don't have anything to worry about, because the girls are doing, you know, they had been coding for a while. They're like taking over, they're doing all the work. And they said that the boys, they're going to have to follow what they say. So I don't know if it's, and they worked well together. They did pull this young man in. And I think it was a good experience for them as well as for the young men, because they were able to work together in a collaborative space. And I think that's what we're trying to do. So we know that the girls won't always be in this single gender environment, and that's not the goal. The goal is to develop these skills and this confidence and this ability where there's no judgment, so that when they do go back into this co-ed environment, they're able to, I would say, hold their own and be on a level playing field with the boys. And so that's what it's all about, is to prepare them and give them this safe environment to learn, and then kind of push them out of the nest. Yeah.
Well, I have a question that 23 people like.
Okay.
It's from a person named Dana, who happens to be a 17-year-old, who I happen to know is my daughter.
I love it.
She's Cossack. I tell you this because we have a mixed race family. And she asks this really interesting question, I think partially because she goes to a very diverse private school of kids of a spectrum of children. So she asks, how do you define girls or young women as black? And what if girls who are not black want to code? What do you do?
Well, we really focus on girls of color. So it's called, although our organization is called Black Girls Code, we have a focus on African American, African descent, Native American girls, as well as Latinas. We pick those particular demographics because they're the least represented. So when you look at the field in computer science, women are about 14 to 18% bachelor's degrees. But when you're looking at the diversity intersection, African American women only receive about 3%, Latinas like 1%, Native Americans less than that. So we're targeting those particular demographics in general because we consider those to be girls that are the most underrepresented in the industry. But it's open to any girls. So the programs that we have, even in Johannesburg, are very diverse. So as long as you are a girl or you identify as a girl, you can attend the program. We do programs also that are in schools that are open to any girls to participate in. And then we also do these co-ed programs. So it's more so identifying girls that are underrepresented as opposed to identifying that only girls that identify as black are able to attend this program.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
I have something just to mention on that. I'm actually Latina, but I'm half Latina, and I don't look Latina at all. And so I think that, mixed race or, do I fit in is something that's really important, especially when you're already a minority by gender,
Right.
and then you don't know, am I allowed to go to the Latinas in Computing lunch at Grace Hopper because am I really, and that kind of question. And what I've noticed about all of these types of organizations is that they're very inclusive.
Yes.
And I think, I love to hear that you include everyone. And I think what I've learned, and I still am learning, is that when I go, it's about that community and that support, and that's really what the goal is, rather than kind of identifying a certain group.
That's wonderful.
I think, and for us, we really are intentional about partnering with other affinity groups. So Latinas in Computing, Latino Startup Alliance. We really try to partner with other organizations that have a great insight or focus on communities that we don't, because we know that everything doesn't fit one. All solutions don't fit one. So by doing these partnerships and really partnering with organizations that have a different focus than us, we can become more inclusive, because we know that not every girl, especially at middle school or high school, necessarily feel that they fit in. So that allows us to reach across the table, so to speak, and bring more girls into the organization.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great.
So I have a question now for you, Sarah.
Oh.
I love this. It's the shortest question we've got. What is KidHub?
Yes, what is GitHub?
I want to know that too.
Yeah, so I started at GitHub on Tuesday, so exactly 7 days ago.
Oh my God.
And myself and I think you might know Jennifer Arguello.
Oh, yes.
Yes. So her and I are part of the social impact team at GitHub, and we are defining what KidHub is. So I can show you, I have some papers in my bag right now of some sketches that I've done. But basically, it's going to be a safe online space for under 13-year-olds, specifically, to come and collaborate, share, build together, fork we won't use fork as the word, but basically any kind of digital content sharing, collaboration building. We're going to start with coding because that's where my expertise is, and we have lots of partners and people that we know, friends in the community that we can work with. But I'm hoping to bring it past coding and include things like art and writing and things like that. So what is KidHub? I hope that y'all will want to connect with me and help me define what KidHub is, because that's going to be the next month of my life.
Awesome. That seems so exciting.
Yes, I'm very excited.
I'm looking forward to that too, because we've been like always wanting our girls to, use the standard tools of the industry.
Yes.
GitHub being one of them, and that age barrier
It's
little
tough.
thing has always been an issue.
It's very hard, yeah.
So, it's really great to see you guys, looking at how do you get kids
Yep.
into that. I guess the habit
Yes,
of being
exactly.
able to collaborate and share, because we want them to have those same type of
Yeah.
skill sets and habits when they go out.
Exactly.
Yeah, so I love it.
Yeah, and I think, there are some technologies that do it well already, like Scratch, but then you can only do Scratch
Right.
projects. And so that's kind of our goal. We're going to be talking with the Scratch team and seeing if we
Yes.
can integrate. And so, yeah,
It's
definitely.
fantastic.
All right, we have these two questions that keep getting voted up on top of each other, so I'm going to pick one roughly at random. And that's talking about, I'll just read it. We often talk about the success cases in informal learning, celebrating students who thrive. What stories do you have about less successful girls in Black Girls Code? And what have you learned from them?
That's a great question. See, now that one stumps me, because I'm like, do I know of any non-success stories? I'm not sure that I do, because as you said, we don't necessarily tend to focus on those. I know that, but I think the question is absolutely relevant, because even as an organization, we just went through this big organizational development project and looking at, are we reaching the students that need the most help? Because we know that we tend to gravitate towards the girl that's gone off and created these apps on her own or got involved into a prestigious program. And we focus a lot of our energy there because they become our success stories. But we don't really know what students are falling through the cracks. So for us, I would say that's still something that we're trying to figure out. It's how are we meeting the needs of the students that are successful, as well as what student needs are we not meeting? And I can't necessarily say that we have any learnings to date that we can say, okay, this is a student that we fail. But it's something that we're trying to figure out as we get more data and we go a little bit more in depth in terms of getting this evaluative feedback from the students that are participating in our program. So I can't really say that I have an answer for you in the terms of this, but it is something that we also see as a potential issue that we need to address. Yeah.
Let me share a story, crazy enough. I've worked with kids in my lab for many, many years. And a number of these children have come from all different backgrounds. A few of the kids that came from less economically stable areas actually did horribly in developing new technologies with me, and they were the only kids that actually ever did. And we worked with over, I don't know, not the numbers that you did, but and we work over a year to 2 years with each one of them. And what stopped these kids was that they thought there were right answers. Mm-hmm. They actually had been taught, and it had been instilled in them that they had been told for the test, you only write 5 sentences, or there is a right answer that in my adult brain is there, and they thought they couldn't find out what my right answer was. Mm-hmm. And I laughed, I said, I don't have any right answers, I have no idea. That's why you're here to help. And it was so shocking, they never believed me. Mm-hmm. Never believed me, and I never reached those kids.
You know, what's interesting is I've actually seen the same with some of my affluent students as well.
Interesting.
Because they have done really well in a traditional learning environment, in a really formal learning environment where there traditionally are right answers. And so when I go up to them and they have a question and I say, well, let's figure this out together, they think I'm playing a game with them, and they get frustrated and they're like, I don't want to do this. I want you to tell me what the answer is. And I'm like, I don't know.
That's
This
right.
is a bug I've never seen before. Let's figure it out together. And I've seen them, and it's really hard to break that wall of there's a right answer.
Yeah.
It's really hard.
One of the things I think too that, not to be like a blowhard about the educational system, but this is like what the educational system teaches our kids. So I think as educators that are in the technology field, this is something that we have to overcome because we're trying to get kids to embrace failure when the traditional education system, that's like the worst thing that you could do is fail. So like how do we as educators or technologists that are trying to teach kids a different way, a different view and perspective, how do we bypass that? So it's a question that I'm asking myself as well because I see it even in my own daughter and trying to push her that, okay, just because the teacher says it should be X, Y, Z, that doesn't mean you can't make it ABC and not be right. So I think as we try to like really create change in the traditional educational structures, it's a little bit about how we can infiltrate it and then break it up so that kids are able to get past the right answer and get to just a answer, which is uniquely theirs.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I don't know. So I don't know the answer to that.
Well, there was a fabulous note to end on. It was so good. I was thinking we could try and squeeze in one more question, but in some ways that was such a...
Yeah, it really was.
That was
No, I mean, your discussion just now was just wonderful. Thank you. We've learned so much, and there's so much more we have to learn, and we have to learn from both of you. Both of you are doing such wonderful, important things in this world, and I really hope that everyone that's in this audience will come and find these amazing people and talk to them just one-on-one about what you care about and ask them more questions because it's a really important area, really important.
And you'll be joining us at the diversity lunch today, I believe?
I think so.
Yes,
Good.
the diversity and inclusion lunch. We're going to have 500 people talking about important issues about this. We should say that if you can throw the next slide up, that tomorrow at 8:30 we will have 2 more people having discussion, and we want to remind you all. And there you go, those 2 people. And you happen to know who they might be a little bit. Marissa Mayer, our CEO of Yahoo, and Professor Terry Winograd from Stanford. Well, with that, we want to thank you all and thank our wonderful speakers.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.